Alrighty, lads. So I opened up YouTube, right, the other day, and lo and behold, this popped up. So clearly, we have an issue. We need to fix this vote count. Because y'all clearly do not know who the legend, the myth, the man Kyle Katarn is. So, first off, let's start with why is Kyle Katarn so important? Well, within Star Wars and LucasArts, they needed video game protagonists. And at first, everything was going to be just Luke Skywalker. That was just extreme limitations put on their gaming potential. Like, you can't just have Luke Skywalker go somewhere or become evil, because then people are just going to say, no, that's not the game. That's not what happened in the movies. So they came up with a new character. And that led to, da-da-da, Kyle Katarn. His character has not only opened up the gaming industry for Star Wars, but more importantly, he served as a complicated hero for people to write stories about in the expanded universe. Kyle Katarn was more or less a gateway for many people, and is the most important figure in Star Wars video games to date. I truly believe that if we never got in a video game like Star Wars Dark Forces 1 and 2, that Star Wars may never have had such cool video games with in-depth character designs, as the games up to this point have always been blank characters who serve no real purpose other than doing amazing legendary tasks and then just disappearing from the series. There's some where you're playing as like a commander, you're going around, you're leading troops to victory against the very Emperor himself, and you actually lead forces to destroy him. And then once that game's over with, it's like, oh yeah, you're just an unnamed officer, never see you again. Some games like TIE Fighter and X-Wing, you're playing as legendary pilots who save the Emperor or doom the Emperor. And then that's it, you're just a nameless protagonist and you're just gone. Kyle Katarn totally changed that for the better. A lot of people say how KOTOR is more or less a reflection of Kyle Katarn, because here's in-depth characters with cool stories. They're not necessarily good people. Now you may be wondering, oh my god, do I have to play those very, very old, crusty Nintendo 64 video games? Don't worry, dear listeners. I have fondled the many joysticks and oozed out my own human secretions to find out all that there is to be found in the Dark Souls video games. So, besides that, sit back, enjoy, listen to all the crazy shit that I have read through sweatily lapping at the comic book pages to give you a nice, beautiful video about Kyle Katarn. So that way you can actually understand why I think Kyle Katarn could whip Cal's ass. Because you guys clearly do not know why. So, now that you know why I needed to do this video, which is to state exactly in a very serious manner how good Kyle Katarn is of a character for the Star Wars video gaming industry, now let's kind of move on to the lore. Who is Kyle Katarn and why should you, the viewer, give a damn? Well, Kyle Katarn, we meet him in the video game Star Wars Dark Forces. He is, in all sensuality, Doom Guy. Not joking, he would charge into Imperial bases by himself and blow them to hell, armed with nothing but a pistol. He was as neutral as anyone could really get in the Star Wars universe. As in, he aided the rebels, but he wasn't on their side. He was a mercenary. Only doing jobs that he was paid for, and not committing to anything beyond that. In other words, if you paid him to destroy an Imperial base, he would do that. If he sees that there's another Imperial base on the planet, he will not be doing that until you pay him for the next one. This is the kind of character we're talking about. The very first mission we start with is, well, weirdly enough, a very important mission. It's probably the most important mission ever. Your very first mission is you claiming the plans from the Death Star from an Imperial outpost and then dropping it off on the Tantive 4. Those of you who don't know, Tantive 4 is the ship that Leia is on so that the rebels can study the new Imperial weapon, quote-unquote, the Death Star. Da-na-na. This is literally the beginning of the movie, Episode 4, A New Hope. You caused it. Now, while this is all cool, the game takes a massive leap in time. Like, I mean, way massive. So that's your first mission. You get the Death Star plans, you give it to the rebels, great. The second mission takes place after the Death Star's been destroyed already, and the Executor, which is Vader's flagship, has already been completed. So we're talking like a year or two, like it's been a while. And there we have our main protagonist again, Kyle Katarn, who is hired yet again to investigate a rebel base. This time he's investigating a rebel base by the rebels because this base was annihilated in a matter of seconds, and I mean seconds. Somehow the Imperials have a new type of soldier that can charge in and wipe out the rebels and their armies so fast that they can't transmit messages to the rest of the Rebel Alliance as to who's attacking them. Now you may wonder, what does Kyle think of this mission? Well, he tells us what he thinks of this mission. He's sitting here going, a new stormtrooper that's able to wipe out armies faster than light speed? He says, and I quote, "I should have just kept working for the Empire." End quote. Yep. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Our hero, the uncaring mercenary who's just like, damn, the Empire could do that? They can wipe out your entire base faster than you can transmit a message that you're under attack? Shit. Can I sign up back to the Empire and resume my job? Now, this mission, second mission, starts Kyle Katarn on this massive adventure that leads to him finding out that these new troopers are actually called Dark Troopers. This is the first time ever that Dark Troopers have appeared in the Star Wars universe, and Kyle Katarn, armed with just a blaster, has managed to take them out. Yeah, think about that. You remember those Dark Troopers from the Mandalorian episode where it took a lightsaber and a Beskar spear to destroy them? Well, Kyle Katarn destroyed them with just sheer speed, agility, and a whole lot of firepower. So, you may be wondering, like, oh, well, it's an old video game. It probably wasn't too bad. You probably just had to shoot it once or twice. No. It took me like over 100 blaster shots to kill the fucking thing. You don't really have heavy weaponry in this game. There's not a lot of heavy weaponry in this game to actually one-shot the Dark Troopers. So, yeah, I was suffering for quite a bit to destroy this fucking thing. So these Dark Troopers were extremely dangerous, and so he investigated a bit further until he found out exactly where the Dark Troopers were being made. They were being made on the infamous ship known as the Arkhammer. The Arkhammer is being owned by a General Rom Mach. General Rom Mach is a general from the Clone Wars, apparently, who hated the Death Star and viewed it as dishonorable. Not to get too crazy with General Rom Mach, I'll save him for another video at some point in date. That's going to more depend if this video does really, really well. So if we reach 40 likes on this video, I'll do a video talking about General Rom Mach, what inspired the Dark Troopers, what led to General Rom Mach more or less being around. And yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So 40 likes. Tell all your friends to just start liking this video. Start creating a bunch of like sub accounts just to like this video. So, we don't need to know too much about General Rom Mach other than he's creating the Dark Trooper project. He is in charge of the Arkhammer. But more importantly, he spills the beans about Kyle Katarn. He's interrogating a traitor who's been leaking information to the rebels. And he's with Darth Vader. And he tells Darth Vader, oh, Kyle Katarn, he was an Imperial officer and was, quote, too weak for the Empire, so he defected to the rebels. What? Kyle Katarn was an Imperial trained officer? What do you mean he was too weak? Well, we'll find out later on. I'm going to tell you guys what that all was about. But it's not entirely true what General Rom Mach is saying. He's not saying that Kyle Katarn is too weak. Mind you, Kyle Katarn's by himself destroying bases and killing Dark Troopers. Like, the dude's a fucking death machine. But we're going to cover that. Just shh. Let me tell the story. Not entirely true. about whatever General Ron Mock is saying, but it is interesting as many do believe on the Empire side at least that Kyle Katarn is just weak. I'm not joking, like a lot of the Empire do view Kyle Katarn as just a weakling. Like he couldn't own up to the Empire. He couldn't be strong enough of character to carry out the Empire's mission. So, finding out about the Dark Troopers, Kyle Katarn, no joke. This is not a joke here. He actually boards Vader's ship, the Executor, and he blasts his way through into a cargo ship that was bound for the Arc Hammer, gets onto the Arc Hammer, makes it self-destruct from the inside, and as he's leaving, he just fights a legendary boss battle against like another Dark Trooper and a bunch of other Dark Troopers. He finds a ship to escape the self-destructing Arc Hammer in, and the only thing that's blocking him is a defenseless General Ron Mock. And the game will not let you end the game. It won't end the mission until you kill General Ron Mock and steal his vessel. I'm not joking. You could walk past him and try to get onto the vessel. It will not let you. You have to put a bullet down in this defenseless officer's head. I love that. Oh, man. But Vader, in his bridge, he's staring out at the Arc Hammer as it's blowing up to shit, and he sees Kyle Katarn zoom off into space. And all Vader says is, shame. Katarn is strong in the Force. Ooh, boy. So now we know something else about Kyle Katarn. He's Force sensitive. He's strong in the Force. Oh, no. So let's kind of jump back a bit, though. Hold on, this is too many berries to be throwing at you guys. Let's kind of jump back a bit earlier now. Kyle used to be an Imperial trained officer. He graduated from an academy. He was a highly decorated cadet of the officers of the Empire. He got a medal for a training exercise that involved wiping out rebels off of an asteroid. He was, by any standard that you can uphold, a hero of the Empire, and was destined for greatness had he stayed in the Empire. So how did our little death machine find himself in the Empire to begin with? Well, when he was a young man, he finally reached of age to sign up for the military. And he did so, but only because he and his father were barely making a living repairing their droids and selling what produce their farm was making. So, his father sat down with Kyle, and they ended up recording this discussion where Kyle's father kept on hugging him and saying, I am always proud of you, no matter what you do. No matter what, I want you to always know I am proud of you, like Kyle. And he gives him consent to go and join the Imperial Academy. This is very important much later on in the world. So, Kyle leaves home and joins the Academy. While at the Academy, Kyle at first is poorly educated, to say the least. He comes from a farm. He's from humble beginnings. But despite that, he can master stratagem and theories of combat far faster than anybody in his class. He's such a Chad that even though he's fingering these books easily, he takes on extra classes outside of his curriculum in martial arts, martial combat, engineering, and he aces those as well. So, being a master at just about everything it takes to be a man, there's Kyle Katarn. He and the other officers have a few tasks to do before they graduate. And this leads to the thing I mentioned earlier, the asteroid exercise. Every officer is supposed to complete a task where they actually lead an assault on a rebel base. So, seeing an asteroid with a bunch of rebels on it, the mission was smoothly. No other way to say it. The mission went without a hitch. The mission had no issues to it whatsoever, and this is largely in part to Kyle Katarn, who not only led his troops to victory, tactfully covering their corners and shooting down rebels, but he had this sense whenever things would go wrong. And in sensing that, he would pull his troops out of danger and save them from casualties. So this was the first time ever the Empire won a fight with 0 losses. None. And, to make it even better, they captured most of the rebels who lived inside the base instead of killing them all like they normally do. So, when Kyle was looking through the captives, he realized a lot of their stories matched up, that they weren't entirely rebels, they were just simply people trying to make a living in the galaxy. So he let them go. He said, "You guys are just people trying to make money. I understand. I come from a farm. I would have done anything for money. I probably would have done this shit. Get out of here." But one of these rebels in particular is of note, and that is this beautiful woman known as Jane Ors. I want you guys to know that. Write that down. Jane Ors. A woman who, when Kyle looked at her, he felt a weird connection with her, like as if he should know her, like as if she's familiar to him. He couldn't explain why, but the Force, later on, as it turns out, the Force was telling him that she is his destiny, that she's vital to his destiny. So, upon letting all of the rebels go, including Jane Ors, he returned to his academy as a decorated hero. And shortly after all this, mind you, again, this is crazy. Here's a young cadet who just led a military operation and had 0 casualties for the first time ever in the Empire's history. He is now getting a medal before he even graduates. That's how good he is. Now, shortly before his graduation ceremony, though, like 3 months before roughly, Kyle Katarn receives a letter that his father was, just to be YouTube safe, unalived by a bunch of rebels. This hurt him extremely because he literally just spared a bunch of rebels from total slaughter. And this is how they return the favor, is how he felt. It's a really interesting thing. So, this is kind of like a side tangent. I'm talking a little bit off script. But a lot of people do this, right? So this is crazy, but this is really relatable. So let's say, for a crazy example, you are at war with Haiti, right? You are just playing as you are in real life an officer of the American Army in Haiti, and you have a situation like this. You kill a bunch of rebels who are trying to kill your troops, and now you're seeing a bunch of civilians. Men, women, children, yada, 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 right? And you spare them. In the moment that you turn your back and they walk away, one of them pulls out a pistol and kills your brother who's serving right next to you. This is how Kyle Katarn felt. He felt extremely personally affected. It wasn't that extreme though. Like, these aren't the same rebels that we're talking about. But he could generalize it. He could feel it. He's like, you know what? All rebels deserve death. Next time I conduct an operation, I'm going to wipe out every single one of them. I don't care if they don't have a blaster on them. I don't care if they meet Imperial regulations as a rebel. If they're in that rebel base, they're dying next time. This is what Kyle really thought. This is what he really viewed the world as. And it's totally understandable. It is totally understandable. We see that today a lot of times. We see it with the Vietnam War. We saw it with a lot of cool real-life examples of war where soldiers would get that. They would get very personally inflicted. There was one really good one where a soldier who was in the Vietnam War for a very, very long time, he gets a bunch of new Marines to join him in his army. Not his army, but his squad. And they're investigating a Vietnamese village, and they know. They don't have the evidence, but they know that this village is feeding the Viet Cong. He just starts blasting into their food. He's just destroying their food supplies, and the villagers are like, wait, how are we supposed to eat? He's like, honestly, I should be putting bullets into you people and taking the food, but I'm doing this instead. Be happy for that. It's like, oh my god. So he's blaming all of the men that he's lost under his command on this village. He's blaming the whole war on this village and just about any Vietnamese person he runs into. This is kind of what Kyle Katarn is doing right now at this point. Thankfully, he doesn't lead any more military operations. but it's understandable to dive into that hatred. It's understandable to look into him and go, wow, Kyle. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I understand. So now, 3 months later, he's at his graduation ceremony. He is more dedicated than anyone else to wiping out the rebels. Now, I'm not going to go too crazy with the graduation ceremony, but there's two important people that we need to take note here. Jellic. Jellic, you may say, who's that? He's an inquisitor. No one knows it. He's just this random guy at the graduation ceremony, but he's an inquisitor. We're going to talk about that. And General Rom-Mok. Yep. General Rom-Mok was at the graduation ceremony for Kyle Katarn. Yeah. So these two people shake hands with Kyle Katarn, and General Rom-Mok puts the medal on Kyle Katarn's chest, honoring him for his heroic deeds in such a masterful display at the academy. When Jarek goes and touches Kyle Katarn, Kyle feels uneasy. He feels like he's under attack somehow. He feels unsafe. Like everything around him is just screaming that he's in danger. He needs to get out. But what made it even worse is the stuff that Jarek was telling him. Jarek confided in Kyle in private. He says, you know, Kyle, there's a place amongst the government for people with real power. Puzzled by this, Kyle kind of stepped away and went on a bit of a short vacation with his Imperial officer friends. But it kind of dwelled in his head. He's like, a place in the government for people with real power? What the hell does that mean? And he kind of noticed too that the moment he stopped touching Jarek, he felt safe again. He felt all of his nerves cool down. Like he didn't feel uneasy anymore. It's like, this is odd, to say the least. Who is this Jellic character? Like, who the hell is this? But either way, Kyle Katarn goes on a short little cruise, a vacation cruise, with his Imperial friends, the officers. And now they all come from rich families. So they engage in lavish dinners. And I'm talking like for days and days and days, Kyle is just in these amazing dinners where it's just lavish as hell. Everyone's in their Imperial uniform with their medals on their chest, eating, drinking, having a great time, and only talking about what nasty things they would do to a rebel if they catch them. I am not joking. The entire vacation, basically, is just Kyle Katarn listening to everyone saying, oh yeah, rebels are, they're not even people. Oh, a rebel. You know, if I killed a rebel and I killed a rat, I would only document that I killed the rat. It's like, what the hell? These people are just straight up hateful, and they have no real justification for it. They don't have a justification for it like Kyle does. Kyle has a real reason. If Kyle said some of this shit, I would understand. It's like, yeah, you feel like you're betrayed because you just spared their people and then they just go kill your father. Well, I understand that. But these people were just going crazy with their speeches about how much they hated the rebels. So after many, many, many dinners, Kyle Katarn decides he needs to walk and go out. He does. He walks amongst the crew of the other passengers, and he bumps into a very familiar sight. A woman that flushed his face with rage upon re-encountering her. Yep. Jane Ors, the rebel he spared earlier. Chasing her through the ship, he demanded to speak with her. And after many attempts and failures, I'm not joking, like he's bumping into shit, he's falling all over the place, people are actually getting in his way on purpose. He finally finds the rebel hiding spot on the cruise ship. They recruited him, but it took a lot of convincing. So to recruit such a decorated officer, they did the very thing that the Empire wished to hide. The truth. The truth behind his father's death. Turns out Kyle's dad was a rebel leader and friend of the Jedi. Da-da-da! What? Yep. The Empire, realizing this, they had men fan out and execute all the rebels on the farm. So this included Kyle's dad, Kyle's neighbors, Kyle's family friends, everybody dead as hell. Now, they tried to disguise this though, which is really interesting. So, the Empire not only wiped out this little village, but they disguised it by making their stormtroopers wear rebel clothing. In other words, these rebels who were quote unquote rebels, they look like mercenaries. They look rugged, they look disheveled. They're trying their best to look like rebels. But here's the interesting thing. Kyle points this out. When he's watching the recording, he goes, their movements and their combat doctrines are textbook Imperial doctrine. Yep. He knows after fighting rebels that rebels do not fight this way. Rebels do not systematically clear corridors and shit. Soldiers do. These are Imperial soldiers. The way they're fighting, the way they're shooting, the way they're doing things. So now Kyle Katarn, realizing the truth, he defects from the Empire right then and there. And he spends some very saucy time with Jane Orrs. And Jane Orrs and Kyle Katarn have like this weird relationship where the two of them kind of meet together for a short period of time, then split away. But they always like love each other and they always come back again, split away. This is going to happen a lot throughout the story. So that's why I'm just going to kind of mention her now, explain their relationship. But I'm probably not going to explain her that much going forward because there's too many times where I'm going to have to say, oh yeah, by the way, Jane Orrs was in this moment. Oh, by the way, Jane Orrs was not in this moment. That's going to mess up the story. Let's ignore it for now, but just know he's got a waifu. Now, this is where we do get someone who's totally different from Luke Skywalker. Mind you, Luke Skywalker, upon seeing that his family was dead, joined the rebels immediately. Mon Mothma, for those of you who do not know, Mon Mothma is the very leader of the Rebel Alliance. She offers her condolences to Kyle Katarn and confides in him that the fight is not with the Empire. The fight is actually with Emperor Palpatine and his cruelty. Kyle Katarn's not buying that story. He's just sitting there with his arms crossed, looking smug, just like, tell me more. Because he knows what she's doing. Mon Mothma is trying to recruit him as a soldier. She's giving him the speech that every officer ever does to recruit a soldier. Come fight the good fight. Fight for something bigger than yourself kind of speech. Mon Mothma realizes that Kyle's not an idealist and he's not budging. He doesn't care to work for them. So she offers him a mission and pays him. And this mission starts the video game Dark Forces. It's the mission to go secure the death plans, not death plans, but the plans of the Death Star by himself. And at first, Kyle Katarn refuses, saying, why should I go by myself? It would be much better and faster if you just send a commando squad to hit it. But Mon Mothma and all the other rebel leaders look at Kyle Katarn and they go, if we attack the base in force with a lot of troops, civilians will inevitably die. But if we send just you, no civilians are going to get hurt. And Kyle Katarn looked at this and went, never in my academy training did we ever talk about civilian casualties. So it didn't really win him over to the rebel side, but it definitely made him go, dang. Maybe the galaxy's not filled with terrible people like I thought it did. So, this leads to the game that we already explained, Dark Forces 1. So now, what happened after the video game Dark Forces 1? Well, a whole lot of things have happened. And boy oh boy, you guys may want to strap in because this is going to be a bumpy ride. So, while doing odd jobs for the rebels and the Empire that he only deems worthy of his time and money, Kyle is still vengeful. You see, you may take the boy out of home, but the home never leads the boy. So Dark Forces 2, the video game, starts at this time period where we see a more charismatic Kyle Katarn and the more staple, standard version of Kyle Katarn. A rogue who will commit to any sort of act so long as he gets what he needs. Now, Kyle Katarn is on Nar Shaddaa, the very first mission, and this is about 1 year after the Battle of Endor and the second Death Star was destroyed. Here he's meeting an information dealer, a droid by the name of 8T88. Not being an idiot, Kyle came prepared for a fight, and sure enough, there was one. The entire hab block of the city was swarming with 8T88's men trying to capture Kyle Katarn. You see, dear listeners, Kyle's home had a disc inside it that the droid 8T88 was tasked by an Imperial cult to go translate. Problem is, Kyle is the only person who knows the language on that disc. So 8T88 disguised the meeting with Kyle Katarn about revealing who Kyle's father's killer really was, when in reality 8T88 was working for Kyle's father's killer. Isn't that interesting? Now you may think, this is very confusing. What the hell? This is a bit of a time skip. This is a bit too much information to take in. Very confusing, I know. But damn, it gets good. Like, really good. You see, the issue we have here is that Kyle Katarn is much more laid back. He's much more chill. And I think the reason for that is because the Empire is destroyed. The Empire effectively is lost. But there are still factions out there called Imperial Remnants and Imperial Cultists. Imperial Cultists are like Dark Jedi, who were once Inquisitors, and they're leading little small war bands of Imperials out into the galaxy to fight. And then there's Imperial Remnants, which are officers. The most notable one, of course, is Thrawn. Everyone loves fucking Thrawn. Don't know why, but Thrawn is still cool in all of his aspects. But just know that there's like many different factions of the Empire right now, and they're all fighting for control. Meanwhile, you have the Rebel Alliance, which is barely holding on. It barely has a currency system. It barely has anything going for it. It is brutal. So, Dark Forces 2. You see, there's a Jedi Master who survived the Jedi Purge and was captured and killed by Kyle's father's killer. A powerful Dark Jedi known as, drumroll please, Jarek the Inquisitor. Yep. Jellic. My bad, Jellic. Jellic the Inquisitor is Kyle's father's killer. So, oh boy. That guy from 10 minutes ago? Yeah, that's him. He ordered Kyle's father to be killed. Well, the Jedi Master that Jellic is interrogating, the Jedi Master fights back and is unfortunately killed. Now, thankfully, by dying, the Jedi Master's Force Ghost finds Kyle Katarn and guides him in the way of the Force and talks to him throughout his journey and aids him in becoming a Jedi. Awesome. Kyle Katarn, of course, is a little skeptic about this. He doesn't know if he can quite live up to the ideals of being a Jedi, but right now he wants to find out who murdered his father, and for damn good reason. He wants to put a bullet in their brain. So, Kyle Katarn, surviving his ordeals on Nar Shaddaa, realizes that he needs to go home. He hasn't been home in over 12 years. That's how long it's been. So, he rewatches his recording of him and his dad on their last meeting where his dad tells him that he's so proud of Katarn no matter what he does, that he's always proud. And he goes back to his father's place, and he sees that the place is ransacked. Like, the place is absolutely destroyed. It looks like someone has been searching in his father's home to find something. Now, while investigating, Kyle Katarn finds a disc of his father's personal belongings, and when he activates it, it's a message left by his father. And as his father's talking, he says again how proud he is, blah blah blah, and boom, a lightsaber erupts out of a secret panel inside the house. I am not joking. A lightsaber from a Jedi Master, the very one who's talking to him, just pops out of a panel, and Kyle Katarn takes it, starts it, and now he gets the legendary lightsaber. Upon which, a Dark Jedi, who is very young and brash, breaks into the room and fights the untrained Kyle. Now, the two lightsaber duel, and Kyle Katarn beats him, but barely. Because you gotta remember, Kyle Katarn just got a lightsaber. This kid may be younger than Kyle Katarn and may be stupid, but at least he's had some training in how to use this damn thing. So it's a tough fight, I'm not gonna lie. I died like 2 times doing this damn fight. It was a pain in the ass. But either way, beating the Dark Jedi, his name was like Sharish. Doesn't really matter because he's not an important part of the story. But defeating the Dark Jedi, he drops his lightsaber, and Kyle Katarn puts away his. And the Dark Jedi is like confused. He's like, "What? You beat me? What? You're not going to kill me? Are you stupid?" And Kyle Katarn goes, "It's not good to kill an unarmed opponent. It's dishonorable." In which the Dark Jedi just kind of looks at himself and goes, "Oh my god. It's not about being good or bad. It's about being honorable." And here he is. He wants to be a warrior. So he's like, "I may be a Dark Jedi, but at least I could be honorable like this Jedi." Yeah. So the Dark Jedi retreats. And this is when we see the gang of Dark Jedi that are supporting Jellic. You see, it's a motley crew of very dangerous Force sensitives. Honestly, they look kind of like a freak show, as displayed over here. Rather than a dangerous band of killers, they just kind of look like a circus show. They're really weird bunch, to say the least. But Kyle, being an untrained Jedi that he is, has now no choice but to fight every single one of them and discover what they're fighting for. Turns out they're fighting to find the location of the Lost Valley of the Jedi, a valley where all Jedi souls go to, and whoever can get there would be able to imbue themselves with the Force power of all the dead Jedi and become so powerful in the Force that they could just do a flick of their wrist and wipe out half the galaxy. Yeah, this is some Thanos type shit. Oh yeah. So, Kyle beats the Inquisitor's retinue one by one, but he comes across the youthful Dark Jedi that he saved before. Kyle, by telling another Dark Jedi that's dishonorable to kill an unarmed opponent, the young Jedi intervenes when one of the Dark Jedi try to strike down Kyle Katarn when he's not armed. And he blocks it, and upon which the woman looks at him and goes, "What? Why are you stopping me?" And she kills him. And upon which, as he's dying, he goes, "It's not honorable." Ugh. And then you, Kyle Katarn, barely push up and get the lightsaber and go, "Alright, I'm not unarmed now, bitch. I'm ready to fight." And you fight her and you defeat her and kill her. I just find this really interesting because it's so interesting how they always tie this kind of stuff in, where a young Jedi, or a new Jedi really, reflects the idealism back at what it means to be a Jedi to someone who's more jaded, more used to being a Jedi, and they kind of stop and pause and go, "Huh, I forgot about that lesson. That was like way in the beginning, huh." I always like that. But nonetheless, we get to the end of Dark Forces 2, where Kyle pushes and pushes and pushes forward, and he finally meets Jellic. This is where shit gets extremely funny. I don't mean to be downplaying the seriousness of it, but damn, it is funny as hell what happens here. For a few reasons. One, Jellic is imbued with the power of the Valley of the Jedi. But Kyle, now being a fully trained Jedi, basically blocks all of Jellic's attacks with ease. And two, Jellic is by far, in my opinion, the easiest boss of the game. I'm not joking. there's a fight you have to do before this, and it's this guy who's wielding dual lightsabers. He is extremely difficult. I must have died like 2 or 3 times to him because he would not stop bouncing off the goddamn walls. I am not joking. He is so annoying. He would not stop jumping up and down with these 2 little goddamn sticks stabbing the shit out of me. Yeah, I'm getting like PTSD just thinking about it. I wanted to break my controller a few times when I fought him. I was like screaming at my TV screen when I fought that guy when I was a kid. So here we get to the end of Dark Forces 2. So you guys ready? Because this is really good ending. And I mean really good ending. Beating Jellic. Jellic is down on his knees. He drops his lightsaber and he goes the whole speech of, "Oh yes, Kyle Katarn, strike me down and fall to the dark side. Strike me down and you'll be nothing as good as me, blah blah blah." Kyle, in his anger, he just picks up Jellic's lightsaber and he just throws it at his lap. And Jellic looks down at it and he's like, "What?" He's so confused that when he picks up the lightsaber, Kyle just slams his lightsaber down on Jellic's chest, killing him. Yeah. So, the anger over Jellic killing his dad took over Kyle Katarn, and he's just like, "Oh, nah, you ain't unarmed, buddy. No. You see this? I am willing to fabricate evidence just so I have an excuse to strike you down." So, yeah. Kyle Katarn's not a good guy. And this leads to the next video game called Star Wars Jedi Outcast. Now, I'm not going to get too crazy with Jedi Outcast, because this video has been very lengthy to say the least. But Jedi Outcast is where we see Kyle Katarn has forsaken the Force. He forgoes all of the Force because he's disgusted with his own actions and cuts himself off from it. As he has failed, he fell to the dark side. I find that really interesting for a premise. Here's Kyle Katarn, this one-man death machine with a blaster. He gets a lightsaber, becomes a fully trained Jedi, fails to hold his anger in check, and he does the responsible thing and says, "You know what? I'm better off with just a blaster." Gets rid of the lightsaber and just goes about his journey. So you see, dear listeners, Kyle Katarn is an amazing character. And we get a character that does a lot of the right things and fights for the right cause, but does it for such a pure, selfish reason. Now, I'm going to kind of end the video here, but just know that there is a lot to cover. But I figured this summarization is more than effective to illustrate my point. Kyle Katarn is an amazing, atypical Jedi. He isn't anybody that you can find in the Star Wars universe. He's very unique. He is, as he puts it, quote, "I'm just a man with a lightsaber and a whole lot of questions," end quote. He puts into perspective how the light side can be very restricting for a carefree spirit such as himself, and how the dark side is ultimately just power hunger. So Kyle is the doom guy of the Jedi, and when the Jedi Order is reformed, he takes up the role of the Battle Master, as he fights in just about every single war that has ever occurred in the Star Wars universe by this point. That's his future. If you guys wish for me to do a second part of Kyle Katarn where I talk about how does he become the Battle Master, what happens in his new Jedi Order with Kyle Katarn, what happens afterwards, what happened in Jedi Outcast, comment down below what you guys think. Because if this video does well, I'll continue and we can talk all the way up to Kyle Katarn's very last entry into the series. But I think this is a good point, is that somehow a gingery Jedi who can barely push a fan to stop moving is somehow better or stronger than Kyle Katarn. What? You gotta be smoking that pack. I don't know what you're smoking, but I want some of that Dagobah green that you be smoking, because goddamn, there's no way in hell Cal could beat Kyle Katarn. No way in hell. Just downright, it's not possible. Kyle Katarn uses both sides of the Force. Force lightning, force choke, healing, force speed, force protect. He uses all these abilities, and you're telling me that somehow a random kid with ginger disease is going to somehow beat him? Like, get out of here. Get out of here. Besides that, this has been Free 700. I am out. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a very long recording. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope you guys have listened. I hope you guys have learned and looked back and go, damn, maybe I should play old games more often. And I would recommend that. I recommend that. Because old school video games are just better designed. There's more effort put into them. There's more love, if you would, caked into it. So please, go ahead and play old games or watch long plays of old games if you can't get it to run on your computer and stuff. But a lot of these are backwards compatible by these day and age. Like Jedi Academy, I know, and Jedi Outcast, I know I could play on the Xbox, which is what I did. But Dark Forces, no, it's computer, and you have to kind of finagle it. I always recommend good old games just because they tend to patch the game files as you buy it, which is nice. Because I'm not a modder. I don't know ones and zeros. I don't know how to edit shit. So besides that, I've been Free 700. I am out. See you guys next time.